Is Congress going to do anything on immigration? There have been several failed starts.
Several.
Now.
I mean, going back over 30 years now, we've seen both parties, different administrations try to tackle this, only to see a number of different failures. And I would say what's different about this year is, first of all, the president put an arbitrary timeline with March 5th for the Dreamers, for DACA, and President Obama's executive order. We blew by that, but now there are a number of court decisions, and then we did a discharge petition just to force a timeline to address this issue. But over the next 2 weeks, before we get a chance to take up this issue of kids being separated from their parents, we've got 2 weeks to go before we'll actually be able to get something on the president's desk for him to sign. We had it in our bill last week, but it was a failure.
I mean, what are we looking at there? Because the president's message to the GOP was, don't bother, wait until after the midterms. So do we lack leadership from the president in trying to get something done, particularly in the short term here? I mean, you tried this week and failed.
Yeah, there were several mixed messages, I think, that came out, but certainly the president supported this. This was the 4 pillars. I mean, this is the 4 pillars that he put out there. This is the 4 pillars that he had negotiated with Democrats in the Senate. And it's much of what the Gang of 8 bill had just a few years ago. So a lot of similarities on the things that the Democrats have always supported, but we've got a bigger job to do moving forward. I would say one of the positive things that came out of this is we had a majority of House Republicans that supported a pathway for Dreamers and automatic protection from day one. So I felt like we did move the ball forward, but we have some timelines coming up that's going to force us to do our job.
Do you think politically that the president has now turned this from a benefit to a disadvantage for the Republican Party? Because he certainly got some support during the election related to immigration, but now with this issue of separating families at the border, it seems as though not only is the other side mobilized, there are going to be big protests this weekend, but you also had a number of Republicans who came out against that policy.
Yeah, I mean, everything happens in Washington, D.C., either with a deadline or a result of a lot of pressure. And I think we're going to see a lot of pressure, both with the policy of separating kids from their parents. We're pushing to get policy enacted that would actually keep family units together. And then we have court decisions that are coming out in Texas, and then most likely the Supreme Court dealing with Dreamers and whether or not the DACA executive order that President Obama did is constitutional. So between the two of them, there's going to be a lot of pressure all through the summer. Ultimately, we've got to get our job done, and so I'm hopeful that we'll pass a very narrow bill next week, actually right after the 4th of July, and then come back and do a much broader bill with border security and dealing with Dreamers.
I want to move on and talk to you about the trade situation, because we've had the Canadians responding to the steel and aluminium tariffs that the United States have already applied. We heard from GM today saying, look, if we're looking at potential import tariffs on auto parts, it could ultimately cost US jobs. People have already told us today that actually this is pretty unusual for a company like GM to be so vocal towards the US administration. Are we worried about US jobs and this situation backfiring on the United States? You know,
certainly, I think it's rare for GM to come out, just as rare for Harley-Davidson to come out earlier this week. There's a lot of questions and concern. Now, obviously, we've had some trade imbalances that are negative for the United States, so we should be addressing those. But I'm an almond farmer in California, and we export the greatest percentage of our crop. And so we have a lot of perishable items that have us all concerned as well. We're going to have to work this out.
Are we handling it wrong right now?
I wouldn't say wrong. I mean, there are definitely issues that we have to address. NAFTA needs to be fixed and improved and updated, but we are taking on a lot of different countries all at the same time. It would be nice to negotiate one and get it done and move on to the next one.
We talked earlier to a former U.S. ambassador to Canada who was very critical of, in particular, the tone that the president has taken with regards to Canada and also our other trade relationships. He also said that Republicans and corporate America are frightened of the president. They're scared of the president, and that's why they won't speak out more publicly against some of this different rhetoric, if nothing else. Do you think that's true?
I think part of it is just patience. I mean, I do believe that this president can negotiate well, and we are at some imbalances on a lot of this trade. So I think part of it is patience, but as any business owner, I mean, we all want certainty in the marketplace, and we know what we're dealing with today. We're not sure, you know, what type of imbalance will be created in the future, or whether or not there's going to be a short-term penalty that we could face as other countries are reacting, especially the countries that are our strong allies and partners that we do so much with. It's uncomfortable sometimes.
What are voters saying to you? Your constituency saying to you about the fears? Are they afraid of some of the headlines that they see and the apparent risks, or do they think actually that this administration is getting it right?
Well, certainly the economy. The booming economy is going well. You know, there was a lot of ads that were being posted up in my district about the tax cuts. People appreciate the tax cuts. A very blue-collar area that, you know, $2,000 is a lot of money for somebody receiving back in their paycheck. So, from that perspective, the economy, I get a lot of positive responses about that. But even I remember on a Friday night very vividly when the question came out about steel. People in my district didn't hear steel. They heard all of our ag commodities that we export. Yes. And automatically a lot of questions came out about that. And obviously we're talking about a lot of other countries and a lot of other items now, but there's still a lot of concern out there too.
And just quickly, in your district as well, you being a farmer yourself, yes, it being a farming district, you must be hearing a lot on immigration as well, because
oh, absolutely,
you've got workers there who are immigrants.
And immigration is always the top issue. I mean, these are dreamers that go to school with our kids. Some of them are family members to some of us, you know, dealing with a ag shortage of labor. I mean, you start shutting down our agriculture industry, it affects our entire economy too. That only one issue that's even close to that, it would be water. If you shut off our water, as you've seen, we've had devastating crop loss because of water shortages.
Yeah.
How concerned are you that the House flips in the midterms, that it goes to the Democrats here, in light of all the issues that we've just been talking about? And as you've said, taking on too many countries, impacting certain areas of the United States that are very sensitive, perhaps accidentally.
Yeah, I would say right now things are going very, very well for us. As long as we continue to accomplish, you're elected to lead, and I would expect us to get some more accomplishments between now and the November election. I would say one thing that's different about today's politics is the issues change daily, sometimes quicker than daily, where, you know, we used to deal with news cycles that you'd be talking about the same issue for months.
So it makes it more difficult to predict.
Yes, it's hard to predict right now.